want to go ahead and start by saying, Wincino, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. Alright. Whew. We're back, everybody. And I actually took the time to eat and wake myself up more before I started. We got a doozy in store for today. We did case 1, we did case 2, now we're on to case 3. The Adventure of the Runaway Room.
Glancing over my records of the late last century, I am faced by the events of a certain bitter winter. A murder in a carriage as it sped through dense London fog in the dead of night. Though the victim and the perpetrator were the only ones inside, there were multiple witnesses to the crime itself. However, none could have imagined at the time that such a seemingly obvious case as this would end in such a horrendous manner. My friend, Mr. Herlock Sholmes, once said of the incident, "I believe that the prelude, the beginning of a long concerto that impressive Japanese student and I were to play together."
Amazing. Is this really just a railway station?
Railway station or not, I've never seen such an enormous building before.
And look at all the steam locomotives. This country is incredible.
I feel like I'm dreaming.
So this is the capital of Great Britain.
So, where to?
Oh, hello.
Climb aboard. I'll take you wherever you want to go.
In that case, the Supreme Court in Whitehall, if you wouldn't mind.
My pleasure. I suppose you're visiting students from abroad, eh?
Yes.
Thought so. Well then, I hope you enjoy your stay. And welcome to the centre of the world, Great Britain's mighty capital, London.
February 18th, 9:21 a.m. British Supreme Court, Lord Chief Justice's office. What an incredible place. It's so imposing. It's almost suffocating. This place is breathtaking. It looks like a fortress. There are some stone buildings like this in Japan now, of course, but they've only been built a few short decades since we opened our borders to the outside world. An authentic example like this has quite a different impact, wouldn't you agree? A far cry from the wood and paper most of our buildings are constructed from. It's certainly unfamiliar, but I think there's more to the differences than just construction materials. What is this place again? This is the Lord Chief Justice's office, Naruto-san, in the Supreme Court of Britain. The Lord Chief Justice? We had instructions to report here at this time, if circumstances were different. We were supposed to let the Lord Chief Justice know that we had arrived from Japan. But Kazuma can't. No. So instead we are here in a different capacity, as envoys to report the news of Kazuma-sama's death. Yes. And having delivered his or her message, an envoy's duty is done. So we'd have to return to Japan. If we want to remain here in Great Britain, I have to take Kazuma's place as the law student selected for the study tour. Yes, which means you need the requisite qualifications as a lawyer, which is what I've been studying for. Here in Great Britain, it is the Lord Chief Justice who appoints lawyers, so that's the second reason why we're here, to have you officially recognized as a lawyer. It is the only way that we'll be able to remain here in London. I hope I'm up to scratch. Ah, good morning. Sorry for keeping you. Oh, I trust you aren't too exhausted after your long voyage from Japan. It seems I'm 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 47 seconds late. My apologies. Oh, no, don't mention it. We're never happier than we were standing with nothing much to do. How fortunate. So, introductions. I am Male Strongheart, Lord Chief Justice of the British Empire. I feel like a little mouse under an elephant's foot. Come on, Mr. Naruhodo, don't be a mouse. Oh, it's an honor to meet you, Lord Chief Justice Strongheart. I am Ryunosuke Naruhodo from the Empire of Japan. Well, Mr. Naruhodo, welcome to London, the capital of our glorious British Empire. Yes, thank you. So, what are your impressions of our capital so far? How do you like London? Oh, hell. I've been so nervous ever since I got here that I can't remember a single thing about the city. It's simply splendid, isn't it, Mr. Naruhodo? Oh? We've had a wonderful view of some London streets from the carriage on the way here from the station. Everything is so impressive and grand. I must say, I'm almost at a loss for words. I'm glad to hear you like it. The city boasts tramways, piped gas, water and gas, even cables supplying electricity. We spearhead every revolutionary new technology in the world. Every visitor to London is astounded. Oh yes, astounded is the word. Thanks for saving me there, Susato-san. And everyone seems so jolly and full of vigor. Yes. There is much excitement about the upcoming Great Exhibition we will be hosting here in London. Great Exhibition? Cultural and technology achievements from around the globe are to be exhibited here in our grand city. It'll be the greatest spectacle of its kind in history, and will make Paris's World Fair look like a toy shop. Gosh, I can hardly imagine how magnificent it's going to be. Great Britain's capital city is nothing but magnificent. London is the center of the modern world. Even if you do say so yourself. The sun will never set on our great empire. Perhaps it is fate that in these progressive times we welcome visitors from the land of the rising sun. Lord Chief Justice, I think you were expecting a student of law for this study tour, weren't you? Absolutely. A Mr. Kazuma Asogi, if my memory serves. That's right. The British government has already been telegraphed a full report on the situation. I understand the young man lost his life aboard the steamship bound for our shores. That's amazing. The news reached him before we even arrived. My country naturally extends its deepest condolences to yours. Oh, thank you. And you honored this appointment specifically to inform me of the news? Yes. We are here in the capacity of envoys from Japan to report the sad news in person. They tell me you Japanese are a people of protocol and courtesy. I see that it's true. And it is with some regret that I must inform you that the death of the young lawyer means this study tour arrangement can no longer proceed. If you would just hear us out, Lord Strongheart. What do you have to say, madam? It's about the study tour. Mr. Naruhodo here would like to make a proposal. What he now? Well, Mr. Naruhodo, this is it then. The moment of truth. The thing is, Lord Justice, Lord Strongheart, I was wondering if perhaps you would consider allowing the study tour to go ahead. Don't misunderstand me. Britain would ideally like to see the tour go ahead, but without a lawyer from your country, there's nothing to be done. Well, in that case, what if there was someone else, another lawyer from Japan, I mean? Is there something I don't know? Only a single lawyer was invited to Great Britain from your country, and that was Mr. Asogi. At least that's what I've been led to understand. Well, the thing is, this really isn't going well at all. I just can't seem to find the right words to say to this man. Mr. Naruhodo. I could ruin things here if I'm not careful. What am I going to say? If there's someone here from Japan who could be described as a lawyer, it's me. I can do it. Is that so? I mean, I don't actually have any qualifications as such, but no qualifications, you say, and yet you still claim to be a lawyer. I have acted as a lawyer in court before. Only once, and as it happens, and I had Kazuma to help me, and I was the accused, but glossing over the details. I've been spending every spare moment on the journey here to Great Britain studying. I've learned all about British law and court proceedings while I was on board the SS Buria. The voyage from Japan is some 50 days, I believe. Not what you might call a full education. To become a qualified lawyer here in Britain, not only do you need a university degree in law, you must also complete several years of training. I realize it's far too short of a time period, but I can't just go back to Japan. Kazuma, Mr. Asogi's journey had only just begun. Coming here on this study tour was all he thought about. I have to carry on and do everything he planned to do. I know it may sound like I have an overly infatuated opinion of myself, but I would do anything to prove that I have what it takes. Any test you care to set me. Just one chance. That's all I'm asking for. Please. 31 seconds. Sorry. Your opening statement there, Mr. Naruhodo, it was 31 seconds long. Not too brief, not too protracted. A perfectly judged appeal, I would say. Which is a skill that would stand you in good stead as a lawyer. Oh, thanks. So, you're willing to put those words to trial, aren't you? Well, I'm all for entertainment. Huh? Let me ask you one thing first, sir. Yes? You say you intend to do everything Mr. Asogi planned to do. Are you firmly set on that path? Well, yes, that's my intention. I see. Am I imagining things? Or did his expression just alter a fraction there all of a sudden? Very well. You have your wish. I'll give you a chance. The test to become a specially certified lawyer, whether you pass or fail, is entirely down to you. Really? So, what form will this test take exactly? Tell me, Mr. Naruto, what do you consider the role of a lawyer to be? Well, defending people, of course. Well said. So, let's have you defend someone. Huh? Your timing is perfect, in fact. There is an apt trial about to begin later today. No advocate has been appointed for the defense yet, so this will be welcome news. Today? Straight away? If you manage to secure a verdict of not guilty, you'll have passed my test. What could be simpler? How do I get myself into these situations? Well, could I ask, what sort of trial is it, Lord Strongheart? Yes, good question. Ah, I remember. It's a murder trial. Murder? An extremely simple case, I understand. You really can't lose. That's easy to say. But I should mention, just in case, if the defendant is found guilty, he will of course be sentenced to capital punishment. Capital punishment? He'll be put to death? Here in Great Britain, murderers are sent to the gallows without exception. Presumably, you read that much in your short C-based introduction to British law. We can't possibly agree to such a test. We would be toying with a man's life. I am the Lord Chief Justice, and I've decided it's acceptable. But you can't do that, can you? There's no need to overcomplicate things. All you have to do is ensure that you don't lose. So the defendant may live or die depending on how well I perform in court? If I lose, he'll be hanged. Mr. Naruto, you come to me claiming to be a lawyer. If you want me to take you seriously, you need to prove you're willing to do a lawyer's job. And you say you intend to see through the will of your compatriot, Mr. Asogi. I would like to understand just how far you're willing to go in order to make that happen. He's testing my resolve. What's the matter? You've fallen silent. I'm sorry, but time is pressing. The trial begins shortly. I need an answer from you now. What's it to be? What do I say? Do I agree to this absurd test? Alright then. If I have to give you a decision now, my answer is... I can't do it! I can't get the words out! 15 seconds. Your decision-making needs work if you want to be a lawyer. That was too slow. So, it is as I suspected, is it? Sorry. You have a noble intentions, but lack the resolve to see them through. The test is cancelled. Thank you for stopping by. Go and acquire your ticket for passage back to the east tomorrow. This conversation is over. Yes, Lord Strongheart. Thank you for offering me a chance. Mr. Naruto. I'm sorry, Miss Susato, but what could I do? It's alright. I understand. You do? It's not an easy decision to choose whether to defend a man in these circumstances, but resolve has nothing to do with it. What are you trying to say, madam? I think what Miss Susato means is that no matter how badly I like to be recognized as a lawyer and stay here in Great Britain, to risk another man's life by trading his one and only chance at a trial so trivial would be utterly unforgivable, and I feel exactly the same way. I'm sure the defendant won't see this trial as a test, as some kind of experiment. A lawyer may fight for his clients in court day after day, but for each one of those clients, the particular day they stand on the dock may be the only chance they have to fight to prove their innocence. No, I was wrong. I'm not qualified to do that job yet. I'm sorry for wasting your precious time, Lord Chief Justice. Wait, Mr. Naruto. Oh, was there something else? It's approximately 20 minutes by carriage to the Old Bailey from here. If you leave immediately, you should still be in time. But I just said that I was quite serious what I told you. The defendant in this case has literally no one to advocate for him. What? At this point, he can't hope to find someone to represent him. The trial will begin without a defense. And if that happens, there is only one possible outcome. He will receive the most severe sentence the judge can pass down. That's awful, but that is the truth. Why does it have to be like this? Please don't expect an answer to every question. The cold, hard truth of the matter is that there is only one person now with a chance to save this man from a very miserable end. And that is you. I'm really his only hope. So, what do you say now, madam? Me? What do you mean, Lord Strongheart? You said it wasn't an easy decision to choose whether to defend a man in these circumstances, and I agree. But, in my estimation, it is purely and simply a matter of resolve. Oh. Our time is up here. I have a meeting to attend. I must leave in 2 minutes and 16 seconds. So, venture into our great city and enjoy yourselves. He's gone. The Old Bailey. If we're going to do this, Mr. Naruto, we must leave at once. Alright. February 18th, 9:45 a.m. The Old Bailey Defendant's Antechamber. Okay, I thought there was going to be more after that. Oh, thank goodness, we're in time. There's still 15 minutes until the trial begins. I never knew a horse-drawn carriage could go so fast. Thought my teeth were going to rattle loose. Did you hear what I said, the driver, when we climb aboard? Get us to our destination in 5 minutes, driver, and there's a guinea in it for you. It's one of my favorite lines from the Herlock Sholmes stories, and it worked quite perfectly. I'm not sure why you're so pleased. I thought we were going to die, and we had to pay gold for the privilege. Well, at least we arrived here before the trial started. Yes, I suppose there's that. Anyway, I don't understand it. The court clerk said the defendant should be here, but there's no sign of him at all. So this is the Old Bailey. Even this room for defendants to wait is grand. Are you alright, Mr. Naruto? I'm feeling tense, that's all. This place gives me the same sense of foreboding I remember from the Supreme Court in Japan. An oppressive air, almost as if the building itself is going to crush whoever's about to be sentenced. It feels like only yesterday that I was the one about to be crushed. Yes, whoever the man you're to defend is, I imagine he's feeling very alone at this moment. Top of the morning to you, madam. Sir. What are yous doing, following me here? Things are fair desperate, are they? Sorry. Would you look at those expressionless faces? From the east, are yous? We're from Japan, yes. Ah, Japan is it? Right, say no more. So, how much do yous need? No. We're here just because... No need to explain, fella. I've been there myself. So I have. No place to go, nothing to eat, barely a penny to your name. All while in a strange faraway land. Well, actually, we haven't found a place to stay yet, no. 'Tis grand, 'tis grand. Let me start by giving yous 1,000 guineas. Say nothing now. Ha, 1,000 guineas? Please, Miss Susato, you don't have to shout. But 1,000 guineas that's enough to buy an entire mansion in the most prestigious area of Tokyo. What? 'Tis nothing to me at all. I like to ensure I have sufficient funds to weather a rainy day, you see. I've enough wealth to buy the city of London 2 or 3 times over. Could that much rain even fall in one day? Well, even so, we couldn't possibly accept such a large sum of money. Ah! He hit me in the eye! Don't get me wrong, fella. I'm not giving it to you, no strings attached. I'll be waiting for you to do something for me. Oh? To be honest, it is a little embarrassing. The trial that's about to begin, you see, is for me good self here. I'll be on the dock. So now, what I want you to do is to come along with me and stand there beside me. Officially, you'd be my lawyer, but that's just a little detail now. Oh, well, the thing is, don't worry about a thing. All I have to do is stand up there next to me, nothing more. Otherwise, you see, the trial is going to start without me having any kind of representation at all. So it was true. The Lord Chief Justice wasn't just making it all up. I'm terribly sorry to have to ask, but does that mean you're the defendant in this trial? Bluster and blazes, do yous not know who I am? Me, one of London's biggest names? No, sorry. We've only just arrived in the city, you see. I see. I suppose it isn't altogether impossible. Well, just next to Hyde Park in the center of London is another beautiful park. Sorry, a park. What? 'Tis called McGilded Park, full of blossoming flowers in the spring and singing birds and whatnot. I donated it to the city, so did I. An entire park? In central London? A city of smiles, that's my vision for London. There's nothing Magnus McGilded wouldn't do for the city and its quarrel old people. That's amazing. I mean, really extraordinary. But now they've got all to say I'm a good-for-nothing criminal. Me, Magnus McGilded. What is the matter with London police, I ask you? Alright, don't pass out. Mr. Naruto? Perhaps now would be a good time to introduce ourselves while the gentleman catches his breath. Good idea. Mr. McGilded, the thing is, we're actually here on London to study British law. We're law students on the study tour from Japan, you see. So, if you don't have a lawyer for the trial yet, and you'd be happy to put yourself in our hands, we'll do our best. What was I after saying, you daft idiot? I've given you 1,000 guineas to stand up there next to me, haven't I? Well, yes, but I wasn't really offering to just stand up next to you. Oh, I think I see what's going on here. Sorry. I know what you're thinking. This Chancellor of a fella claims to have more money than the Queen. But if that's true, why the blazes can't he hire the finest lawyer in all of England? Because he did! And that's the only explanation. Well... well... Yes, exactly. What now? Well, like you said, if you have all the money but you don't have anyone to represent you in court, there's no other logical conclusion that you're guilty of the charges. Well, you call a spade in the East, so you do. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean any offense. I still just can't express myself very well in English, you see. And I'm never sure what's acceptable to say and what isn't, so... Is that so? Because you sounded fluent enough when you were telling me what a blackguard must be. I'm sorry. Ah! I can't say I blame you for thinking it, fella. It's a little strange, to be honest. Why you don't have a lawyer, I mean. That would be the fault of the Reaper. Sorry? Did he just say Reaper? I, the Grim Reaper of the Bailey, Lord Beric van Zieks. Beric von Zieks. He is the prosecutor. The prosecutor is the Grim Reaper? When von Zieks stands for the prosecution, they call accused his sacrificial lambs. And to this day, in every single trial in which he's been the prosecutor, the accused has been damned. What? So, it's reached a desperate situation, where there's no one willing to stand in defense against the fella at all. You could say he's a living legend of the Old Bailey. Goodness. Lord Baroque? Okay. I don't know how to pronounce that. I think it's Baroque von Zieks. Beric von Zieks. Huh. It'd be kind of a mess. I do my best to avoid streaming that game as much as possible. In fact, I don't even want to stream 8-Bit Deathmatch. He must be an exceptionally talented prosecutor then. Talented isn't the word you're looking for, madam. It's cursed. Cursed? What on earth? The defendant is summoned and his counsel. Please make your way to the courtroom. The trial is about to begin. His counsel, that would be me. Oh, 'tis time. Well then, fella, don't let me down. But I don't know anything about the case. You haven't told me what happened. Until you showed your face here, I made up my mind, so I had. Sorry. I decided that I'd have to defend myself in there. How would that have worked? But then you made it appear it's a student of law, wouldn't you know? 'Tis no accident, I can assure you of that. 'Tis fate. So don't get cold feet now, please. I literally know nothing about the case, or about this man who stands accused. In fact, the only thing I do know is that I can't just turn my back on him. Alright, we're gonna say Baroque Van Zieks. We're gonna say that, because I feel like that's the correct way to say it. Mr. Naruto, the man has no one. He'll have to stand alone in that courtroom, armed with nothing to defend himself. Yes, something that Cosmo would never have allowed to happen. Counsel for the defense, what are you doing? If you're late for the start of the trial, you will lose your right to stand. I'll be right there. Okay, no, I thought that was Susato, damn it. It's happening then. My first trial in the British court. I hope you're watching over me, Kazuma, because I have no idea how I'm going to manage this. February 18th, 10 a.m., the Old Bailey courtroom. So this is the highest court in Great Britain, the Old Bailey. The centuries of history in this place is palpable, isn't it? It's so different to the Supreme Court in Japan. It feels both imposing and serene at the same time. The atmosphere almost makes words abundant. Whatever the country, determining a person's guilt or innocence is always a solemn affair. May I say something, Mr. Naruto? Oh, yes, what? Your eyes look ready to pop out of your head again. I know, but I just can't help it. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session. We are here today to determine the guilt or innocence of Mr. Magnus McGilded. I now call upon the counsels of the prosecution and defense to declare their willingness to proceed. The prosecution is fully prepared. That must be the Reaper of the Bailey. He really does look fully prepared to dispatch his next poor victim to the underworld. Counsel for the defense, you appear to be Eastern. Do you speak English? Huh? Oh, yes, of course. Sorry. But he asked if the defense was ready, and I couldn't be further from ready if I tried. Those eyes please me, Nipponese. They shroud your fear, your doubt, your trepidation. They run wild, clinging to some phantom notion of courage. The quintessential look of a sacrificial lamb. Ugh, a cold shiver just ran down my spine all the way to the tips of my toes. Now, Mr. McGilded. Yes, my lord. You stand accused of murder, a capital offense. You could be sent to the gallows if found guilty. Are you quite sure you wish to entrust your defense to this foreigner? I've always said, my lord, 'tis a grand thing to have opportunities to the young. Even if the fellow student is given some small island off in the Far East, it is not the British way to ignore dangers of yourself to give those less fortunate a fair chance. I like to think that acts of chivalry do the great British Empire proud. Listen to Mr. McGilded. What a fine gentleman London has him in. Did you hear he donated £5,000 to the government the other day? Now there, please, may we go play McGilded Park? It seems as though everyone in the public gallery is firmly behind Mr. McGilded. That's definitely welcome news, and he certainly has a way with words. I'm surprised he couldn't convince anyone to defend him. Eloquently put, Mr. McGilded, and most laudable statement. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm sure I need hardly remind you that you 6 members of the public have been selected for your impartiality. Are you ready to proceed? Yes, my lord. If the task is to send rotters to the gallows where they belong, I'm more than ready. At the manor, his lordship always says we should dispose of rubbish promptly. Naturally, I agree. Any criminal here will soon be wishing they never set eyes on me. I feel a chill. Oh, don't mind me, dears. I'll just be getting on with my knitting. Must finish these mitts for my grandson. Ah, Mr. Naruto. Those people are the jury. Yes, that's something we don't have in Japan yet. That's right. I've only ever read about it. But here in Great Britain, the court's final verdict depends on the opinions of these 6 jurors. The judge passes sentences according to law, but the jurors determine guilt based on common sense. So the defendant is ultimately judged from 2 completely different points of view. But how exactly do the jurors give their verdict? That I don't know, but I'm sure it will become clear as the trial progresses. Yes. Prosecutor Van Zeeks? My lord. It has been a number of years since we have seen you in the courtroom. I thought you'd renounced your fame. I'm known as the Reaper of the Bailey, my lord. Infamy rather than fame, I would say. But yes, 5 years have passed since I last spread my wings in this capacity. So what brings you back? Is there some change of circumstance of which the court should be aware? I leave that to your imagination, my lord. So the Reaper has been out of action for 5 years. Why does he have to choose today of all days to make a comeback? Don't lose heart. Don't lose heart, Mr. Naruto. As you wish, sir. The court nevertheless welcomes your return. Now then, opening statements, I think. A summary of the case, if you please. Certainly, my lord. As your lordship is aware, this is a case of overwhelming simplicity. You must be the only ones in here who aren't aware. The incident took place in the late evening, 3 days past. The hour was some minutes after 10. The victim was a maker of brick building, known to the community as Thrice Fired Mason. Sorry, thrice. He was a very accomplished craftsman. The bricks he fired were said to be almost indestructible. The victim's corpse was discovered in an omnibus in service in the streets of London at the time. The dagger that had been thrust into the victim's abdomen is believed to be the ultimate cause of death. Here's the autopsy report from the investigating medical officer at Scotland Yard. Thank you, counsel. I shall accept that and the photograph as evidence. Okay, it gives cause of death of internal hemorrhaging as a result of single stab wound to the abdomen. The photograph of the victim taken in the omnibus. The knife in his abdomen is clearly visible, but his face is partially obscured from view by an old crooked hat. And one further item of evidence. The prosecution wishes to submit these as well. And these are... Good lord! Is that blood, counsel? Yes, my lord. Seized by a policeman who arrived at the scene. These gore-soaked gloves were taken from the hands of the accused when he was arrested. What? Mr. McGilda's gloves had blood on them? Yes, I will accept these as evidence as well. Leather gloves the defendant were wearing at the time of the incident. There is a blood stain on the right glove. How did I get into this? I'm backed into a corner before I even started. Continuing. According to the driver of the omnibus, there were only 2 passengers traveling inside his vehicle at the time. Only 2? Obviously, one of those passengers was the deceased brickmaker, Mr. Mason. The other was the accused, Magnus McGilded. Well, rather damning circumstances, to say the least. Defendant, what say you? Well, of course, I have no recollection of such a thing. Mr. McGilded. To be sure, I rode the omnibus that evening. But whether I'm in the carriage, I'm taken with a fierce tiredness, and I always succumb to it. Are you claiming that you had been asleep? 'Tis the motion of the carriage, my lord. Lilton, and so it is. And when I opened my eyes again, it was a desperate sight before me, the body of a man I'd never laid eyes on before in my life. Now I ask you, what good-hearted soul wouldn't rush help a fella bleeding from his stomach? I wasn't about to start worrying about me gloves now, was I? I reached out to give the man a hand. So the blood got in the gloves then after the man had been killed? Unfortunately, that statement of the drivers is only the beginning. What? That's not all of it. There were multiple witnesses to the precise moment at which the brickmaker was fatally stabbed. He's Irish. Order! 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 when the killing took place, only the victim and the accused were inside the carriage. And there were witnesses to the crime. This is not just a case of compelling evidence. It is the nail in the coffin for the accused. Thank you, counsel. The circumstances of the crime have been made quite clear. I think we will hear the testimony from these witnesses first of all. Your wish is my command. Bailiff, bring the witnesses in at once. Witnesses, your name and occupations. My name is, well, everyone calls me Beppo. I drive an omnibus in the East End. Bruce Fairplay. I'm a banker in the city. My name is First. Lady First. I make hats for gents. Let's begin by confirming the facts. 3 days ago, at a short time after 10 o'clock in the evening, all of you present at the stand were in an omnibus and witnessed to the aforementioned incident. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Quite right. Yes, sir. That's right, sir. Very well then, let's proceed to your formal testimonies, please. Each of you will tell the court precisely what you saw. It was the last bus of the evening, so I had a few customers. I remember it well. The victim and the man accused of killing him were sat next to each other on the inside of the bus. Then, out of the blue, the accused just reached over and plunged a knife right into his guts. That's right. He stabbed him. I screamed, I did. Couldn't help it. As soon as I heard a scream, I stopped my bus, and that's when I saw it too. Unambiguous testimony, I must say. Exactly, my lord. These men witnessed the incident in the omnibus with their own eyes. I'd like to ask a question, if I may. Yes, counsel. Well, this testimony makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. Why not? Well, the incident took place inside a moving carriage, didn't it? As has been clearly stated from the outset, yes. Well, in that case, how could those two witnesses possibly have seen what happened? There's no way they could have seen the inside of the moving carriage. How quaint. I've read that civilization in the Eastern Nations has a good century behind our own, but you're here in London yourself. Are you really so ignorant about our omnibuses? Huh? Tell me, my Nipponese friend, have you ever traveled in an omnibus? Well, no. We only arrived in London this morning. No matter. I've arranged for us all to see for ourselves, the actual scene of the crime, that is. What do you mean? The actual scene? How? A carriage is designed to be moved, after all. Presumably you understand that much. Yes. The omnibus in which this bloody crime took place is here today in this very building. Here? What? The entire carriage? Bailiff, bring forth the stricken omnibus. So that's an omnibus. The omnibus. I can't believe they could bring something so enormous in here. Great Britain's courts rooms are amazing. As you could see, the omnibus is pulled by 2 horses and can carry up to 8 passengers. 4 passengers seated inside the enclosed cabin and another 4 on the rooftop deck above. Every Londoner knows that the best views of the city's architecture and sights are to be had from on top of an omnibus. And I suppose I should point out to our foreign guests that there's a skylight in the roof allowing a view of the interior from the seats above. Ah, skylight. Oh! The penny drops at last, I see. These two gentlemen were occupying the rooftop seats on this omnibus when the murder took place. That is how they came to witness the grim incident. Through the skylight. That makes perfect sense. Well, counsel, this is a first. In all my years behind the bench, I've never experienced the crime scene itself brought into the courtroom. There are a number of important clues remaining inside the carriage, my lord. I would like to submit the omnibus itself as evidence. That is the prosecution's wish. Very well, I see no reason why not. The omnibus is hereby formally accepted as evidence. The 8-seater omnibus that was the scene of the crime. There were passengers both inside the carriage and on the roof deck that night. I can't believe it! The entire crime scene entered as evidence? Yes, Great Britain is simply extraordinary. I could help myself a lot by giving that omnibus a thorough examination, seeing as it's here. Let us continue with proceedings, then. Your cross-examination, counsel. Let's go ahead and examine the omnibus. So we have the skylight right here. You can certainly see inside the carriage through this opening, that's for sure. Yes, and there's a lamp on the enclosed cabin. I'm sure that the witnesses could have been able to see quite clearly. That's not good for us. Well, let's open the door and go inside, shall we? Ugh, the scene of a murder. It's horrible. That's blood that's soaked into the seat. The victim's, obviously. Yes, and that seat would be clearly visible from the roof deck. Would you really stab someone in full view of other passengers like that, I wonder? Well, it was after dark, and there was a lamp on in here, so perhaps the culprit couldn't see anything outside through the skylight. Whichever way you look at it, it doesn't seem like it was a planned attack. The seat looks reasonably soft, but it's actually rather hard when you sit on it. And it's only just wide enough for two gentlemen to sit side by side, really. Of course, an English gentlewoman would be dressed in such finery. It would be quite impossible for her to climb up to the roof deck, so she would have to be seated here. A woman in a kimono would have the same problem. Women's clothes are very impractical, aren't they? The seat has a handle, it seems. This looks like all sorts of equipment that might be needed to keep the omnibus running. Feeding tubs, tools to repair wheels, blankets, horse-shooting tools. So this is a strange compartment for the coachman to keep his things, it seems. There doesn't seem to be any spaces for passengers to stow their luggage, that's for sure. Well, I don't imagine it would be very convenient for a purpose anyway. What does this notice say? That's a poster from the Great Exhibition that's due to start 6 months from now. There's a lot of focus being drawn to the Crystal Tower, the centerpiece of the whole exposition. Oh, the Crystal Tower. It's under construction already, I believe. People all over London might be fizzled with excitement at the prospect of such a grand event. Have you seen enough? Let's step back outside then. Phoenix Wright Omnibus. I think I've seen all I needed to see, actually. pray don't expect a snip on each stray to understand the intricacies of a British court's cross-examination rights. Alright, my first cross-examination in a British court. Focus, Ryunosuke. Focus. We don't have anything immediately apparent. So, let's just go in and just press.
Hold it!
Yes, I think it was sometime after 10, wasn't it? Oh, yes, that's right, sir, yes. Ever so cold it was, sir. Freezing, in fact. And you had 4 passengers on board at the time, is that correct? Yes, that's right, sir. Not all traveling in the same parts of the bus, of course, though, no. And there were no other passengers when the incident took place. No one alighted, for example. You're quite right with that, sir. No other passengers like that. Nope, nope. So nobody fled the scene of the crime, then. I have to say, the boss insists that it's running, he does, every evening. That's the last bust of the day. But I do wonder sometimes if it's altogether worthwhile. Yes, sorry to say. What do you mean by that? Well, what is it being so cold and everything and only making 20 pence on the run, you see? Yes, I spend that much at a pub on the way home, just trying to warm up again. The victim and the man accused of killing him were sat next to each other inside the bus.
Hold it!
And you saw them through the skylight in the roof of the carriage. That's right. When you sit up on the top deck, the window's right there at your feet. There was a lamp on the inside, so I had a pretty good view. The two of them were wearing hats, and I couldn't make out their faces. But there was not a shred of doubt in my mind that it was Mr. McGilded. How can you be so sure? Well, how can I put it politely? McGilded is a gentleman of rather small stature. I couldn't have mistaken him for anyone else. Let's not forget that when the vehicle came to a halt, the only people inside the enclosed cabin were the deceased Mr. Mason and Mr. McGilded. There's no room for doubt here. I really wish there was. Then, out of the blue, the accused just reached over and plunged a knife right into his guts.
Hold it!
You actually saw the exact moment it happened. Didn't I already testify to that? Or a fair dinkum hard-working city bankers not trustworthy enough these days. Oh, no, I didn't mean that. This is no good. I've really got his back up. Perhaps you could just tell us what you saw in a little more detail. That's my lord? Juror number 3, what is the meaning of this? My mind is made up, my lord. Completely and utterly made up. Made up about what? I don't like the stinking rich. Never have. They're always up to something or other they shouldn't be. Every one of them. And that little leprechaun of a man is no exception. Well, he can't fool me. There's no point in wasting time listening to any more of this. That's my opinion on the matter, anyway. That is precisely what I was about to say. As the foreman of the jury, it's my duty to set a good example for my fellow jurors. What is happening here? Let me see. Ah, yes. It seems that the members of the jury give their verdicts with fire? Apparently, yes. White for innocent and black for guilty. As the 6 members of the jury make up their minds about the case, one by one they each cast a ball of fire into the great scales of justice, as we saw a moment ago. So if those enormous scales fall completely to the black side, does that mean... Let's do our very best to make sure that doesn't happen. Now I'm even more worried than I was before. Very well, the court acknowledges the change in the jury's stance. Counsel for the defense, please continue with your cross-examination. This is a nightmare. That's right. He stabbed him. I screamed, I did. I couldn't help it.
Hold it!
He stabbed him, you say? And you were sitting on the roof deck, weren't you? Yes, that's right, sir. I was up on the roof seats. I remember seeing the little gent sitting next to the fellow that was stabbed. I've been thinking about a new hat design, you see, so I was gazing absent-mindedly around. But then I happened to look down through the skylight. It was just right. It was sticking right in front of his belly. That huge, great knife. A grim sight indeed. Ah, that didn't help me at all. The jury looks like they're even more convinced my client did it than they were before. That appears to have made everyone even more dubious that Mr. McGilded is telling the truth. If only we had some evidence to counter their suspicions. Mr. First. Yes, sir? Is this the knife you saw? Oh, good grief! Yes, that's it. The very one, sir. It is? Yes, counsel. This is the blade that was driven to the victim's belly like a stake through the heart. That is the blade of considerable size, counsel. It is, and furthermore, scabbard is emblazed prominently with a certain initial. The letter M, which seems oddly familiar. Please no. M, for Magnus perhaps, or McGilded possibly. Take your pick. It seems this peculiar big name in London made a magnificent mistake.
Objection!
But there are M's everywhere. Yes. Like in Mason.
Objection!
This blade is far too extravagant for a poor brickmaker to have owned. No, this weapon of murder almost certainly belongs to the accused. Not conclusive, but certainly compelling, counsel. The murder weapon has been introduced. Okay. Largest knife that was found lodged in the victim's abdomen. Its quality and fancy ornamentation suggests it must be quite valuable. My lord, if you will forgive me for the interruption. I want to take a look at this right quick. There's the M. An ordinate letter M, undeniably Mr. Magnus McGilded's initial. And it's beautifully gilded, too. It must have been very valuable, I should think. Ah! What is it? Look at this M. If you turn it upside down, it becomes a W. This could change everything. A W? Yes, this is one of those, turnabout cases. I'm sure of it. I'm afraid I don't know at all. But what am I sure this is an M? Oh, well, that idea was quickly quashed. That part is the sheath, isn't it? Are you alright, Mr. Naruto? Oh, sorry, yes, I just don't really like blades. Oh, those don't seem like the words of a man with a large katana slung from his waist. That's not a blade, it's Kazuma's soul. Anyway, there's no sense in delaying it. Let's see what the blade looks like. Ugh, that looks a lot like blood. It surely is blood, the victim's. Ugh, an Englishman's blood looks a lot like a Japanese man's blood. Did you think it wouldn't? Sorry, it's just that we've only just arrived here in Great Britain. I'm finding it a little hard to adjust. Yes, I do understand. Okay, this is not much else to it. Ah, juror number 2. Go on. Mr. McGilded is a pillar of society and a gentleman's word should be sacrosanct. However, those of us in service know we must accept hard truths. Wait, what are you about to do? Dispose of the rubbish. No. I don't wish to cause offense, but I do like to eradicate all traces of filth and grime. I have painstakingly typed every word uttered here today and cross-referenced all the facts. As such, I am now in a position to draw only logical conclusion. Not again. That's 4 out of 6 jury members who proposed a guilty verdict. There's only 2 left. We've had it. Every time I press these witnesses for more information, I make the situation worse. Nevertheless, what we need more than anything at the moment is more information. We're still very much in the dark. I suppose I'll just have to keep pressing the witnesses, knowing that more sparks may well fly. We mustn't give up hope that we'll uncover something that will give us a way to fight back. But... alright, I'll keep trying. I can't give up. I just need to keep calm and listen to the witnesses' statements again. As soon as I heard the scream, I stopped my bus, and then I saw it too.
Hold it!
What exactly did you see? Oh, well, sir, that would be the passenger, sir. Yes, collapsed on the floor, he was. And by passenger, obviously, you were referring to the victim, Mr. Mason, the brickmaker. Yes, and the other passenger had that knife in his hand like this. By the other passenger, you obviously are referring to the accused, Mr. Magnus McGilded. And then he plunged down like this, stabbing the other passenger in the belly. What? My lord, I wish to speak. Yes, juror number 5, do I take it that you too, as a master of the London Guild of Coachmen, the idea of a murder being committed in one of our city's carriages is utterly abhorrent to me. It wouldn't be right to make a decision before hearing all the facts, though, I said myself. But I've heard enough now. The horse has bolted, as they say. No, please, just keep an open mind a little. Gee up now, Silver Blaze. The finish is in sight. Beppo was a long-standing member of the guild, and I trust what the man says. Oh, thank you, sir. You're too kind, sir. This is too unkind, sir. Which now means that 5 jurors agree to condemn this man. Madam Juror 6. Yes, dear. What can I do for you? You have heard the testimonies of the witnesses in the stand. Oh, yes, I certainly have. Still got my hearing, you know. Then pray tell, why have you yet to pronounce your laning? Well, dear, the thing is, I am a creature of habit, me. I always go to the park at around this time of day and sit on a nice bench and get on with my knitting. There's a lovely little park just near where I live. McGilded Park, it's called. The gentleman donated it to the city, you know, to put a smile on Londoners' faces, he said. I can't imagine such a fine young gentleman would have had it in him to take another man's life. He's always doing wonderful things for the city. That's right, a man like that wouldn't stab someone, surely. Mother, may we go to the McGilded Public Library later today and borrow some more books? How many Londoners live with their heads in the clouds? Do you people not know what kind of a man Magnus McGilded really is? What kind of man he is? The philanthropist, Magnus McGilded, has enough wealth to purchase the entire city he claims to value so highly. But where did all that wealth come from? Your client is a Shylock, sir, and one with the very darkest of souls. What? Stone the crows? McGilded lends money at an extortionate rate of interest, so his victims have no hope of repaying him. When they default, he takes possession of everything they own. He is a vulture that preys on the weak. I've never heard of any mention of this before. Your faculties haven't deserted you, I'm sure, madam. So, has this thought not crossed your mind? Would a man wealthy enough to buy London in its entirety not have a carriage of his own? What possible reason could this man have had to make use of the public omnibus service? You're not saying that... The victim, a poor brickmaker, had next to nothing to his name, save considerable financial liability. It will come to no surprise that his creditor was the accused, Magnus McGilded. But let it also be known that the very day Mr. Mason was killed was the final repayment date for his debts. Good gracious! The brickmaker was destitute. He had lost his house. He had not a shilling in which to repay his debts. And in the end, this pitiable soul had the very last thing he owned taken from him, his life. By the merciless philanthropist pretender, Magnus McGilded. I don't believe it! If I might add something briefly, Mr. Sato? You claim that the victim had been lent money by Mr. McGilded, but where is your evidence to support your claim? Pray forgive the discourtesy of filling my hallowed chalice in the court of law. Aha! There it is! Lord Van Zeek's hallowed chalice! How can this be considered acceptable? But I find myself in an unexpectedly good humor. I have heard ladies from the Far East could show great courage, but I didn't expect to experience it myself. As a judicial assistant to the defense, I'm simply doing my job. What a pity that your display of courage is in vain. With this, the debtor's ledger, which details all monies loaned by the accused. You will find the victim's name clearly recorded inside. Oh. Allow me to present this ledger as evidence. And pray forgive the discourtesy of raising my chalice and toast to the enigmatic East at the same time. A marvelous toast, Counsel. I will gladly accept this new evidence. Alright, I'm actually going to examine that. 20 guineas. The victim owed a considerable sum, and the accused made it quite certain that he had ample recompense. Well, it would seem I've had the wool pulled over my eyes. Regrettably, madam, that is the modus operandi of the accused. And it's such pretty little pop, too. What a scoundrel. Still, maybe it's all for the best. Wait a minute. Let's think about this a little more before... I don't stand for nonsense. That was it. The last juror's decision. According to this Encyclopedia of British Law, when all members of the jury have concluded that the defendant is guilty, court proceedings are suspended and the presiding judge will deliver the final verdict and sentence. That's what it says here. The final verdict. It's over then. Oh. There's a footnote here, though. A footnote? However, the defense... All 6 members of the jury are now in agreement in this case. Allow me to convey my respect for your swift and righteous decision. According to the laws of this country, I will now conclude the trial by delivering my final verdict. I trust there are no objections. Mr. Sato, just tell me one thing. Oh, yes? You were in the middle of saying something before. The footnote on your encyclopedia on British law. However, the defense... What did it say next? Oh, yes, of course. One moment. When all members of the jury have concluded that the defendant is guilty, court proceedings are suspended and the presiding judge will deliver the final verdict and sentence. Then the footnote says, however, the defense has the right to demand a summation examination of the jurors at this point. A summation examination?
Objection!
A summation examination? From which century has that tome of yours been resurrected? Judging from the binding, I would say that book is at least 50 years old. Any modern text on British law wouldn't even give such an antiquated procedure a mention. It's a relic, long forgotten and certainly not practiced. So you're out of luck. Oh. What even is it, Miss Susato? This so-called summation examination? Oh, one moment. I'll read about it. You would demand the right to a procedure before you even understand what it entails. Typical Nipponese. Alright, Mr. Naruhodo, I think I understand. It seems that under this procedure, we will be able to appeal to the members of the jury. To do what exactly? Appeal to them to change their leaning and reverse their decisions, and it says here that if successful, the proceedings of the trial must be resumed. Make them reverse their decisions? Yes, in times gone by, barristers would use a summation examination in an attempt to influence the jury's decision, but that procedure became something of a formality with no practical benefit, really, so it rather fell out of use. I wonder why. Because it was devoid of purpose. Changing just one member of the jury's mind would be hard enough, let alone several. No self-respecting defense barrister would even assert his right to try in this day and age. Still, I don't see any mention of the procedure actually being formally revoked. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that although it may be antiquated and largely forgotten, it isn't yet extinct. What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo? Ooh. A summation examination, our last possible option. Do we assert our right to carry it out or admit defeat? The defense wishes to assert its right to a summation examination, my lord.
Objection!
London is the capital city of the most powerful nation on Earth. We have a duty to the world to exemplify the very highest standards of judicial proceeding. Summation examinations are an embarrassment that shouldn't remain buried.
Objection!
That should remain buried. But it's our right. It's our right. The defense's petition is perfectly valid. The court will now proceed with the summation examination. This is madness. Foreman, are you and the remainder of your jury ready? I'm not, that was not to mention of this letter I received, you see, so all members of the jury will be asked to explain on what grounds they have reached their decision. On what grounds? You must all justify your decisions and explain why you believe the defendant to be guilty. Well, my lord, you're rather putting us on the spot. This is most irregular. Not to mention, no mention of this was made before. I don't recall holding up with this justifying lark. That seems to have thrown the jurors off. It seems none of them have experienced this before. Alright then, summation examination. A defense procedure no practicing lawyer has attempted for years, is it? Well, just maybe, it might be the opportunity we've been looking for to turn this trial around. So be it then, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the court hereby calls upon you to state the grounds on which you find the defendant, Magnus McGilded, guilty of this most serious crime. There was no one else inside the carriage at that time, so it had to have been him. I trust the driver. He has an excellent memory, it seems. 4 passengers, with fares totaling 20 pence. He stuck the chap next to him like this. Brazen, I might say. Absolutely brazen. I simply typed and collated all the statements made thus far and drawn the logical conclusion. You can trust the guild. Fair's fair's our motto. We haven't raised prices over 4 pence for years. The scoundrel stabbing the poor man on the floor. It's beggar's belief. I'm starting to wish I hadn't pushed forward for this now. Some of the jurors don't seem to have wonderfully formed arguments, though, do they? Well, let's see what we can do. We need to get these 6 people to change their minds. I'll have to throw everything I can at them, and use some persuasive language. Just a moment, Mr. Naruto. According to my book, that's not quite how it works. Oh? I thought I would just have to thaw their icy minds with some heat-warming rhetoric about the defendant. Unfortunately, once the jurors have decided the defendant is guilty, they're unlikely to heed to anything the defense says. But then, they've reached their conclusions by their own reasoning, you see. Your pleas will sound like excuses. In fact, it could recoil on you. The more you try to persuade them, the more entrenched they may become. Then what on earth am I supposed to do? Oh dear, I'm just citing what I've read about British law, Mr. Naruto. Right, I'm sorry. Do you have any idea how to make this work, then? Well, from what I can understand, the key to this procedure is using the jurors' own words to make an argument. What do you mean? Well, the 6 members of the jury are randomly selected members of the public. They may appear to present a united front, but the truth is, they're complete strangers who just happen to find themselves here in the courtroom together. And that's a way to break them down, you mean? Yes, exactly. We must listen very carefully to what each member of the jury says, and see if we can identify any contradictory statements. If we can contrast the statements and pit the corresponding jurors against each other. I see. So it's contradictions into what 2 or more jurors say that we're looking for. In a way, then, this is similar to a regular cross-examination. Oh, yes, I suppose you're right. Find contradictions in their statements and pit the jurors against one another to break them down. Alright, I might be able to pull this off. No, that's not right. I have to pull this off. Can we start proceedings, counsel? I would ask you to take your stand for this. I'm expecting a clear and concise rebuttal. Yes, my lord. He stuck the chap next to him like this. Brazen, I might say. Absolutely brazen. The scoundrel stabbing that poor man on the floor. It's beggar's belief.
Objection!
These 2 statements are completely contradictory. What? Explain, counsel, post haste. Oh, dearie me. I was only knitting a jumper for my other half. What's all this claptrap? What does contradictory even mean, I ask you? We've heard from more than one witness that they've allegedly saw the actual moment when the defendant stabbed the victim. Now, out of curiosity, juror number 3. What? Can't you see I'm busy here? How would you say the defendant stabbed the victim? What sort of motion was it? Ah, want to test me, do you? Like this. Stuck the fellow with him without even getting up, just like the Prem banker said. Yes, that's what that was Mr. Fairplay's testimony, quite true. Now then, juror number 6. Oh, is that me, is it? What can I do for you, young man? How would you say the defendant stabbed the victim, madam? Oh, well, dear, as far as I understand it. It was like this. He stabbed the poor man after he'd collapsed on the floor. The coachman said so. Now, don't move. Take a look at these 2 jurors. He stuck the fellow next to him without even getting up. And he stabbed the poor man after he collapsed on the floor. Well, I never. They're stabbing in totally different directions. What? Bless my stitches. What a muddle. What this tells us is that there's a strong possibility one of the witnesses isn't telling the truth. Oh? But why? Why the dickens would they lie? I don't know that yet, but what I do know is that if the trial ends at this point, we may never find out. We may never know the real truth. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, can you really let that happen in all good conscience? Lies, you say? Oh, dearie me. I can't abide people telling lies. The scales? I don't believe it. Wait! Now hear this, my fellow jurors. I warn you, you cannot listen to this man. Look at him in his black suit. He's clearly some devious Eastern sorcerer using magic on us all. If I could use magic, do you really think I'd be putting myself through all this? Answer me this, Dark Jinx. Me? What exactly is the problem? What if the 2 witnesses have slightly different recollections of events? What of it? Let's say the Shylock did stab the victim as he sat next to him on the omnibus, and the young dandy saw him do it. And now let's say the victim collapsed on the floor and then the Shylock stabbed him again, and the old lady saw him do it. Well, what's to say that it didn't happen like that, Who are you calling dandy, sir? Why, I should take this knife to you. Who are you calling old? Why, I should take this needle to you. They're ready to kill each other now. But could the foreman of the jury be right? Did the 2 witnesses see 2 different moments of the same crime? It's out of the question. Unfortunately, Mr. Foreman. What is it, you Dark Jinx? Come on, out with it. What you're suggesting is impossible. It's out of the question. What are you talking about, man? How could you possibly say that? You do realize that I'm only doing my job. As foreman of the jury, I have a responsibility to steer everyone in the right direction. So where's your evidence, man? Well, that's what we want to see. You say the 2 witnesses saw 2 different moments of the same crime. I say out of the question, show me some proof. It looks like the only way I'm going to convince him is to present him with something he can't dismiss. Something irrefutable, hard evidence. As you wish. What? I'll give you the proof. It's out of the question that the 2 witnesses saw the different moments of the same crime, as proven by a single stab wound to the abdomen.
Take that!
This is the victim's autopsy report. According to what's written here, Mr. Mason was stabbed in the abdomen only once. Only once? It's quite simple. The victim was stabbed precisely 1 time. Which means these witnesses can't have possibly seen it happen 2 different times. Alright, I concede defeat. Oh, well done, Mr. Naruto. You did it. If we can manage to change 2 more Chihiro's minds, we can force the trial to continue. 2 more. Actually, there is something else that's bothering me about the couple of their assertions. Then that's where you must strike next. So I need to pit 2 more jurors against each other and show there's another contradiction in their assertions. Exactly. You can do it. Well, the scales of justice have shifted, but they still weigh heavy on the side of guilt. Counsel, you have the floor again. Continue with your summation examination. Alright. Let's see. Alright. Let's see here. Hold on. Hold on. I need to make sure I'm reading this right. That's how much it costs to take the omnibus. That's right. As the guildmaster, I decided to set a policy for all drivers across the city. 1 fare, no matter what bus you take or how far you're going. We had to compete with the rise of the motor car, you see. Us coachmen have to make a stand together. Motor cars, you say? Yes, and this murder is on one of our buses is extremely damaging to our cause. It's beyond the pale. It led to the decline in passengers, you mark my words, and it's all that Radiskull's fault. He has to pay. Is it the crime or his buses he's more worried about? Anyway, every member of my guild is reliable and trustworthy, so if the driver says he saw him do it, that fellow at the dock is as guilty as sin. But does his ability to recall his takings that night really tell us how trustworthy the man is? I manage all his lordship's cash affairs, so I'm very particular when it comes to accounts. I see. A single penny can mean the difference between life and death, after all, can't it? That's a saying in your country. My point is, a man who minds his figures is a man you can trust. Those of us in service would swear to that, sir. Does that bench really need any more polishing? So if the good driver says he saw Mr. McGilden in the act, I don't doubt him. The only task left to do is disposing of the rubbish. Ah, now wait a minute. One of the other jurors mentioned something about money, I think. Now would be a very good time to listen carefully to the jurors' statements. Okay, see, I thought so. I just didn't know if I was reading that wrong, but I had to double check. Pitting them against each other. Yep.
Objection!
Those two statements are clearly contradict each other. But they do. Explain yourself, counsel. Me? Oh dear, what have I done? You swear on Silver Blaze's mane and name? I haven't the first idea what you're talking about. According to the group testimony we've heard so far, there were 4 passengers on the omnibus on the night in question, and according to the coachman, Mr. Beppo, he took 20 pence in fares. Quite right. I've had those precise details typed neatly here in front of me. And juror number 5 also told us the following. The fare for the omnibus is always 4 pence. That it is a fair and convenient single price, just the way London's carriages should be operated. But that doesn't add up at all. In fact, it leaves a glaring discrepancy in the facts. Why, man, why? 4 passengers paying 4 pence each. If you do the multiplication, it would be 16 pence. Exactly. And as I said, it doesn't add up. The figures are different. By 4 pence, in fact. Or precisely, 1 person's fare. 1 person's fare? Yes, in other words, on the omnibus that night, it was distinctly possible there was another passenger we've heard nothing about. Good gracious! Hello, cat lover. This can't be right. The coachmen of the guild are good, honest men, one and all. Trustworthiness is our watchword. The figures your coachman claims most certainly do not add up. Your watchword, good sir, is a fallacy. I beg your pardon. Mr. Guildmaster, I think you ought to consider that if this trial were to end now, the news would surely spread all over London. The news that one of your coachmen tried to hide the fact that he let nefarious characters ride his omnibus. Alright then, how do I make it so this miserable trial doesn't end, Well, according to my book here, you simply launch a ball of fire to the innocent side of the set of scales. Now hold your horses there, coachman. We were all in agreement. Why do you have to go in? Wait till I get my hands on you, Beppo. This is very irritating. Begging your pardon, sir. I'm going to do the same. For the love of Mike! Not you as well! A penny can be a difference between a smile and a tear, after all. I certainly can't put my trust in someone who doesn't follow my exacting standards in financial matters. Oh, really? I, for one, think it's only proper that we hear from the witnesses again. Wait, that means 4 jurors are now leaning to not guilty. We've done it, Mr. Naruto. We've won. What are you playing at, you dandy fool? Shut your trap, sir. No one deceives me. But we had a consensus. I said shut your trap. I know a liar when I see one. And if the chap ever dares to cross the threshold of my shop, I'll take this razor-sharp blade and shave every last hair off his head. Please tell me he's a barber. Well, in a quite remarkable turn of events, the defense's summation examination has flipped the balance of the scales of justice. The jurors now stand 2 for guilty and 4 for not guilty. Accordingly, there's no longer a large enough majority among the jury for me to agitate, and the trial must continue. I hereby ask the defense, prosecution, and witnesses to return to their places, and I call upon all of you to continue to pursue the truth. There's something I wanted to look at. I haven't looked at this yet. The debtor's ledger. This portfolio must contain all sorts of secrets of London's gentry. Oh dear, do you really think we ought to look inside? Well, it's not as though we don't know any... It's not like as though we know any of London's gentry personally, is it? Apart from our great detective friend, perhaps. Actually, I wonder... I assure you will not find Mr. Sholm's name inside. Well, let's see what we find. Gosh, it's crammed full of gentlemen's names, isn't it? Well, I suppose they're probably not all gentlemen at all, are they? After all, not everyone in this country is well off. Ah, goodness! What is it? Look at this! Do you see the name here? Bruce Fairplay. Should that mean something to me, or... It does sound strangely familiar, actually. Bruce Fairplay, the witness testifying in this very moment. Oh, yes, of course, the banker. Why is his name in here? He borrowed 20 guineas, did he? And look, the repayment date is fast approaching. It's possible this is just a coincidence, of course, but this could be very useful information. Among the defendant's list of debtors is Bruce Fairplay, who would have been due to repay his loan imminently. So, Lord Van Zeeks, continue to substantiate the case for the prosecution, if you please. Having savored the rich aroma of the carmine contents of this hollow chalice, it may seem crass to crush it to dust. Pray forgive the discourtesy. Lord Van Zeeks! It's cold in here, or is it just me? As our antiquated tome no doubt says, the prosecution may not speak during the summation examination, so I honored a deadly silence and listened to the charade. It seems I overestimated the intelligence of the jury. Well, no matter. There's nothing so hard to prove as a self-evident truth, it would seem. No, and why else would we grace the courtroom with our presence after all? So, let us proceed to the next round of battle. Bring forth the witnesses once more. Witnesses, I trust you heard the summation examination we had to just endure. Oh, yes, sir, that I did, sir. Of course I heard it. Oh, yes, sir, I heard it. You, sir, on the end, the coachman. I believe it's Beppo. Yes, sir, my lord, sir. If it transpires that in your previous testimony, you were attempting to veil the presence of a fifth passenger on your omnibus, you will be found guilty of perjury. You are advised to bear that in mind, sir. Oh, mio Dio. Oh. Now then, witnesses, I hereby call on you to testify before the court again. You'll explain the various misgivings brought to our attention by the defense's summation examination. I only carried 4 passengers that night, I swear it, but, well, I, for one, was told that I had to pay 5 pence for the bus. He fiddled us on the fares, he did, and then I saw that blood-curdling sight as well. It was all too much. I tell you, I saw McGillet stabbing that man. Everything I said before stands. Oh, yes, he stabbed him, he did. I think so, yes. Counsel, make sense of this for me, please. The phantom fifth passenger conjured into existence by my learned Eastern friend never existed. The confusion has arisen from the coachman's sly little cousinage. Beppo, explain yourself. I'm terribly sorry, Guildmaster. The guild's fare is 4 pence across the board. You know that. Am I to understand that you've been overcharging your passengers by a penny a fare? It's so cold, and the last run of the day is always half empty. You have been dishonest, coachman. I'm sorry. You're a disgrace, Beppo, a disgrace. And your selfish actions have brought dishonor upon the entire guild. If I may, sir, I had to pay 10 pence on the bus just last week. What? 4 passengers at 5 pence each is, yes, 20 pence. I've done the arithmetic 10 times already, but I can't seem to make a result come out differently. No, that figures. Well, it would appear that one of the aforementioned misgivings has already been explained. So, counsel for the defense, your cross-examination, if you please. We've already had the pleasure of a protracted summation examination today. I see you intend to continue the parlor games. Absolutely. Alright. I only carried 4 passengers that night, but, well, actually, hold on. You had a but, wait, go back.
Hold it!
So, there were only 4 passengers in your carriage, but you didn't charge them the standard 4-pence fare. Is that right? It's impossible to make a last run of the day pay. It was so cold that all I could do was stop myself from passing out. I'm getting chilblains just listening to you. It was terrible, so I wanted to give myself a pat on the back for even keeping the bus running. Doesn't a dedicated coachman deserve an extra penny per passenger? You're digging a deeper hole for yourself here. If only there had been a 5th passenger on the omnibus that night, then we would have had another suspect. Well, I, for one, was told I had to pay 5 pence for the bus.
Hold it!
Does that mean everyone on board that night paid 5 pence instead of 4? Well, I paid 5 pence too, sir. And I just told you that I did. A flat fare of 5 pence across the board. This is not something to be proud of. The so-called discrepancy my learned friend identified as nothing of the sort. Much like the phantom killer you so desperately needed, it's gone, dead and buried. I'd have been happy if it ever existed in the first place. He fiddled us on the fare, he did, and then I saw that blood-curdling sight as well. It's all too much.
Hold it!
This blood-curdling sight? You mean the murder, I presume? Yes, sir. A loathsome sight. No one should have witnessed the horror in the eyes of the man the moment his life is taken. Oh, well, not exactly, sir. I mean, I didn't actually see the exact moment the gent was stabbed. Good gracious! Really? We have another witness who did, however. The banker has already testified to it. But Mr. First didn't actually see the point at which the victim was killed. It may turn out to be very significant. I heard the banker chit next to me take a sharp intake in the breast scene. That's when I looked through the glass. That's when I saw the horrible blade poking out of his belly, all covered in blood. Every time I see a knife now, I can't help screaming, even when I'm eating. I tell you, I saw McGill stabbing that man. Everything I said before stands.
Hold it!
So you saw the defendant, Mr. McGill, stabbing the victim, Mr. Mason, who was sitting next to him? That's what I said, isn't it? It was bothering me before, this was. But just a brief moment, he hesitated before answering the question. Anyway, there was only one of the 2 of them inside the carriage, wasn't there? There's been much talk of a 5th passenger, but as of yet, 0 evidence. Then what are we wasting all this time for, eh? It's black and white. The man's guilty. Something about Mr. Fairplay's testimony just jars with me. I wish I could work out what it was. Oh, yes, he stabbed him, he did. I think so, yes.
Hold it!
You don't just say, I think I saw a stabbing. Earlier you testified you saw the moment when the defendant allegedly stabbed the victim, didn't you? Oh yes, that's right. You said the victim was on the floor and described the assailant holding a knife in an ice pick grip. I suppose I might have, you know, yes, put the cart before the horse, maybe. What's this? Well, I'm quite sure about most of it. I was driving the horse when I heard a scream from the seats on the roof deck. Oh, I expect that was me, sir. Then when I turned around, yes, I saw through the skylight. The gentleman was on the floor and the knife was sticking up out of his midriff. That's right, yes. And the fellow holding the handle was the famous man, yes. So in short, you didn't see the moment when the victim was actually stabbed at all. I really thought I did, but when I go over it in my head, no, I suppose I didn't actually see the precise moment of the stabbing, did I?
Excuse me.
Do you have something to say about that, Mr. Fairplay? Now you listen to me. I know what you're thinking. He didn't really see the exact moment the fellow was stabbed. What are the chances of that? Eh? Are you asking me or telling me? He's getting flustered. I might be able to extract some new information from him if I answer him cleverly. Could he have just happened to see the exact moment the crime was committed? Well, it is a little hard to believe, certainly. Unless you spend your time peeping through the skylight at the top of the omnibus, that is. Peeping? I'm a respectable city banker, I'll have you know. And I know what I saw. I remember as clear as a Ballarat day. It was a grim scene, I don't mind telling you. Thank you, Mr. Fairplay. Oh, excuse me if I was getting a little hot under the collar there, my lord. I would ask you to supplement your testimony with a clear statement about what exactly you saw. Oh, I can do that, alright. And I'll tell you just how grim it was. Do you think I forgot the sight of those blood-soaked hands after that butcher stabbed the man?
Objection!
Blood-soaked hands? Well, I admit that soaked might be laying it on the thick, but anyway, there was definitely blood all over them. Both of them were covered in it. Well, I'm very sorry to disagree, Mr. Fairplay, but that's more than a little peculiar. What? Here are the gloves worn by the defendant, Mr. Gilden, on the night in question. Oh, yes, right. And there certainly does appear to be a sizable dark-colored stain there, but as I'm sure you can clearly see, it's only on the right-hand glove. In short, Mr. Fairplay, your testimony is inconsistent. But no, that can't be right. So you're the liar here then? That's right, you're quite clear about it. You said it was both hands. Mr. Fairplay, if your last statement was a lie, it calls your entire testimony into question. You say you saw the moment the victim was stabbed, but is that really the truth?
Objection!
It was a simple mistake. You can't justify accusing this man of lying. Yes, it wasn't both hands, it was only one, but the fact remains. The victim's blood was on the accused.
Objection!
No, Mr. Fairplay categorically stated that he saw blood all over both hands, which means there's a strong possibility that this witness was deliberately trying to mislead the court. Why? Why? I'm a city banker for pity's sake. My word should be the gold standard. I'm a gentleman, not some gutter spine. Upstanding members of society don't perversate. He's claiming to have no reason to lie. Is that really the case? Mr. Naruhodo, if we had some evidence to explain why Mr. Fairplay might be lying, it could turn the tide of this trial completely. Something to show this man has compelling reason to lie in his testimony. My lord? Yes, counsel? The defense is ready to present evidence. By Jove, are you sure? Yes, evidence that will clearly demonstrate why Mr. Fairplay had a reason to lie in his testimony. Very well. I hereby call the defense to present its evidence. The evidence that demonstrates a motive for the witness's alleged deception of the court. I can't keep his voice consistent, but... Among the defendant's list of debtors is Bruce Fairplay.
Take that!
This is the list of debtors who owe money to Mr. McGilded. Yes, a list of innocent victims crippled by the accused extortion. The point is, among the names of these debtors is your name, Mr. Bruce Fairplay. What? Mr. Fairplay, are you currently indebted financially to the accused? No, well, it's barely worthy of being called a debt. According to this ledger, you owe 20 guineas. Not an inconsiderable sum of money, wouldn't you say? Well, what of it? Let's suppose Mr. McGilded were to be found guilty of the murder. What would become of your debt in that case? These documents state that the loan agreement is forged between two individual parties. Therefore, were the creditor, the defendant here, to be sentenced to capital punishment, all outstanding debts would be owed to him would be annulled, that they would cease to exist. Cease to exist? Mr. Fairplay, is it not the case that you claimed in your testimony to have seen something you've never in fact saw? In a devious attempt to annul your debt of 20 guineas to the defendant? Order! 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 Mr. Bruce Fairplay. Yes, my lord. Let me ask you again, and be aware this answer may have the most serious implications on your future, sir. Did you or did you not see the precise moment in which the defendant is alleged to have thrust a knife into the victim? Your silence speaks volumes. You did not tell the truth in your testimony. Alright, now let's not make a melodrama out of this. Perhaps I did overstate the truth a pinch. But it makes no difference. I definitely remember seeing blood on McGilded's hands, both of them.
Objection!
And yet, only one of the defendant's gloves, which we have here as evidence, is stained. So you keep saying... I wonder if I might be allowed to speak, sir. Go ahead, Mr. First. Well, the thing is, I think I remember seeing it myself, as it happens. Seeing what? The blood, sir, on the assailant's hands. I think, yes. I'm almost sure that it was on both hands, not just one. What? What?! It would appear that we're going to need further testimony from all of you witnesses. This time, I would like to know precisely what you did and what you did not see. Do I make myself perfectly clear? Mr. Naruhodo, this is good news. The course of the trial seems to have shifted slightly at last. Yes. I might finally have a chance to turn things around here. There was blood on both hands of the assailant. I sincerely and distinctly remember that. However, I suppose you might say that I didn't see the exact moment the stabbing transpired, if that matters. I remember seeing the knife, and I remember seeing both of the attacker's hands with blood on them. I didn't actually see anything myself, no, not until I heard that scream. Anyway, the fact remains, there can't have been anyone else inside the carriage, or we would have all seen. Well, lo and behold, in truth of the fact, not one of you, the witnesses, is crucial the moment the crime was perpetrated. I apologize, my lord, but honestly, there was no one else inside that carriage, and the man's hands were covered in blood. That much incriminating evidence is tantamount to saying what we saw the man do it. That's really not what testimony is about. Let us examine the interior of the omnibus once more. The victim's fresh blood is clearly visible on the seat, corroborating the witnesses' accounts. In other words, there's no substantial nor significant change in the facts of this case. Very well. Your cross-examination, please, counsel. Yes, my lord.
Hold it!
No, the evidence tells us otherwise. We have the gloves the defendant was wearing the night in question in the court. I'm well aware of that, sir, but nevertheless, I know that I saw and I stand by it. The man had blood on both his hands. He's defiant, even in the face of hard evidence. He steadfastly refuses to admit that he might be mistaken about what he saw, but why? Your reasoning is dire. One hand or two, the salient point remains unchanged. Minutes after the grim crime, the victim's blood dripped guiltily from the accused's fingers. However, I suppose you might say I didn't see the exact moment the stabbing transpired, if that matters. I remember seeing the knife, and I remember seeing both the attacker's hands with blood on them.
Hold it!
You definitely saw that too. Blood on both hands. Yes, sir. I mean, I know what you're going to say. Only one of McGilda's gloves has signs of blood on it. That's right. The thing is, as far as I remember, sir, when I looked down and saw Mr. McGilda sitting beside the other fellow, I don't believe he was wearing any gloves, sir. He wasn't wearing these gloves. That's correct, sir. And I saw the blood on both of his bare hands quite cleanly. It's true the dark-colored stain on the dark leather gloves wouldn't have been so easy to see. I should point out that the police officer who apprehended the accused at the night in question reported that there was no trace of blood on Mr. McGilda's gloved hands. There wasn't blood on his hands? This is puzzling indeed. This must be significant somehow, I'm sure of it. I didn't actually see anything myself. Nope, not until I heard that scream. Anyway, the fact remains there can't be anyone else inside that carriage, or we all would have seen.
Hold it!
And everything you saw of the incident was through the skylight and the roof of the omnibus? That's right. It was fiercely cold that night, but the glass wasn't frosted over. Oh yes, I remember. I was shivering. It was so bitter. Which rather begs the question why the pair of you were sitting on the roof deck in the first place. Well, I don't know about this young fellow, but I couldn't enter the cabin. Oh, why not? It was locked from the inside. I tried knocking, but no one opened the door. It was locked. That's right, and it's a public bus service, for pity's sake. That's not what I call fair play. Yes, I had exactly the same experience. I tried knocking, but the gent inside just gestured out to me to clear off. So I had no choice but to climb up to the roof deck and look down longingly into the warm cabin below. Well, I can assure you I wasn't just looking down, I was glaring long and hard. And that's precisely why I can tell you with absolute confidence that if there were anyone else in that cabin, I would have noticed. Unequivocal, I would say. I'm not sure about these two witnesses. Could they really have seen everything inside the cabin through the skylight? They might not have been able to. Allow me to confirm one thing, Mr. Fairplay. You are riding this omnibus and witnessed the events of the cabin through the skylight and the floor on the upper deck. Is that right? That's right, yes. In that case, there's a portion of the cabin interior that would have been out of sight from you. What? By golly, really? Obviously, at this stage, we can't say for sure. But the possibility cannot be denied that at the time of the incident, there could have been another passenger in the enclosed cabin of the omnibus.
Objection!
Enough hypothetical meandering, my Nipponese friend. The prosecution demands that you substantiate your claims. After all, the scene of the crime is here in the flesh. Very well, I will uphold the prosecution's demand. You will identify the area in this cross-section path of the omnibus. Where exactly in the omnibus are you suggesting this potential extra passenger could have been situated?
Take that!
Both rows of seats on the roof face the direction of travel, whereas seats in the enclosed cabin face each other, which means the visible part of the cabin, which passengers on the roof decks can see through the skylight, is as I've drawn here. Ah! That's right, my lord. As you can see, the seat opposite to the one in the victims where the attacker was sitting in is obscured from view. In other words, if someone had been sitting on that seat, it's quite possible that these witnesses would have been completely unaware of it.
Objection!
It's quite possible some phantom was sitting there. You Nipponese have a forbidding habit of obscuring the truth with ambiguity. I concur with the prosecution's rejoinder. In a British court of law, evidence is paramount. I cannot entertain this conjecture, counsel. That is, unless you're able to put a name to this mysterious passenger whom you allude. Can you, Mr. Naruto? I honestly don't know who it could have been. But could it have been the other seat, which was out of sight from the witnesses on the roof? Who could it have been in the other seat, which was out of sight from the witnesses on the roof deck? I have literally no idea. But as a proud citizen of the Japanese Empire, you will look to the sky and walk on. Make sure all signs of tears are gone. Go on. This isn't just a case of going on, Mr. Sato. Alright then, I'll go on. The defense would like to put forward a name. You are a fool. That response was a desperate attempt by a man who has no notion of his own limitations. A toast to hard lessons not yet learned. Let us not delay, counsel. Defense is still to name the passenger in the other seat. This could be it. This could be the chance I've been waiting to turn the trial in my favor. On that night, on the night of the murder, the person occupying the seat to the omnibus cabin that was obscured from view was...
Take that!
The passenger in the enclosed cabin that the witnesses on the roof deck failed to see has to have been Mr. Magnus McGilded. Mr. McGilded? What are you talking about, counsel? That's the name of the defendant.
Objection!
If I desecrate this chamber by smashing my hollow chalice, do forgive the discourtesy. Lord Van Zeeks. People talk of those tiny island nations in the Far East as having learning and culture of their own, but I see they use the terms ill-advisedly. What are you trying to say? Let me explain in terms even a student of the artless backwater such as yourself might understand. When the body scene unfolded, the victim and his assailant were sitting side by side. Multiple witnesses have attested to that fact. It is the very premise on which this case is built. But that premise may be wrong. What? If the victim really was sitting beside Mr. McGilded, it creates an inconsistency that can't be reconciled in any way. What inconsistency, counsel? The defendant's gloves, my lord. Both witnesses made the same testimony. They claim that there was blood on both hands of the person sitting next to the victim. Yet we know the truth to be otherwise. Only one glove bears the gory remains. The point is, even if the face of this irrefutable evidence, both witnesses have maintained their stance, Yes, the testimony remains unchanged. Exactly. They both adamantly swear that they clearly remember seeing blood on both hands of the assailant. In short, their memory of events is correct, and their testimonies reveals the truth. There was somebody else sitting besides the victim that night, a third party we have yet to identify, and the victim's blood was on the passenger's hands, both of them.
Objection!
And who was this third party? Obviously, the true culprit. Extraordinary! Order! Order! Order!
Objection!
The defense's postulation is just that, nothing more than conjecture. The witnesses have clearly stated they saw the accused.
Objection!
But when elaborating on his testimony, Mr. Fairplay said that two of them were wearing hats and couldn't exactly make out their faces. Yes. The tops of their heads were obscured by the roof. I could see the rest of them, though. Yes, that's right. Both gents were most certainly hatted. Hatters do tend to notice such things, sir. And what particular styles of hat did the two gentlemen sport, Mr. First? I'm afraid I don't remember. And you call yourself a hatter? The style of hat makes no difference. There was no third passenger in that cabin. How can you be sure? Because if there had been, the accused, Mr. McGilded, would undoubtedly have offered to dispose the fact. Unless, that is, you're proposing an even more perpetuous explanation. That the accused failed to even notice the presence of the true culprit in the very cabin in which he traveled. He's right. There was another passenger traveling in the enclosed cabin of the omnibus. It's inconceivable that Mr. McGilded would have been unaware of it. Order! There's clearly a simple solution to this problem. Bring the accused, Mr. McGilded, to the stand. Well, what say you, counsel? The prosecution objects, my lord. On what grounds? As a suspect, he will have already made a full statement to the police. But what if there's some reason why he's unable to speak freely? Miss Magnus McGilded is no uneducated ruffian. If it indeed turns out that the man has been withholding information, you can be sure we'll have that it will have been a most deliberate act. Counsel for the defense, what is your opinion? My lord? Should we ask McGilded to testify or not? Yes, we need to hear what he has to say in order to find out the truth. The defense would like to call Mr. McGilded to the stand. In that case, I would like to hear the opinion of the jury. Ah, yes. I need a little time to consider this. If you ask me, I think we should hear what Mr. McGilded has to say. Get the man out here, I say. It would be utterly illogical to not hear his testimony. When something needs doing, get it done. That's how I run things at the guild. Hearing what the patron of my favorite little park has to say. Oh yes, that would be lovely. Yes, the jury says the man must be heard. Very well. The court will hear from the defendant's testimony. Bailiff, show the defendant to the stand at once. Now, maybe what actually happened that night will finally become clear. Let proceedings be resumed. Mr. McGilded, have you been listening to the discourse of the day? To be sure I have, my lord. There are now two matters on which the court desires to hear from you. The first is to whether or not there was a third party with you in the omnibus cabin as proposed by the defense. The second is that if such a person were indeed present, why did you conceal that fact from the police? Begad, no, 'tis not my nature to hide anything at all. Just answer the question, please. The truth of the matter is, I've been desperate about this all along. Do I tell yous all, or keep me mouth shut? Tell us what, Mr. McGilded? The fine fellow representing me is absolutely right. In the carriage that night with myself and the other man, there was another passenger. It's true? Aye, and 'twas me who helped the little urchin get away after all that happened. You... What?! No, Magnus McGilded, that convenient excuse can't save you now. I am truly sorry, so I am, Lord Van Zeeks. I'm sure you'll be wanting to know that why I said nothing I was taken by the police. I do have but a very good reason, I assure you. Which was... Well, the little child was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and not in any way involved, you see. What? If the police had known that the wee one was there, they would have assumed she'd done it, and that they'd hauled her off to this here courtroom just like myself. I was only trying to spare her that. Young hearts and young minds are easily damaged, my lord. And who is this young child of who you speak of? That I don't know. You don't know? Aye, well, the wee thing just happened to be in the carriage that night. I never saw her before or since.
Objection!
We have absolutely no reason to believe this man. The prosecution calls for the witness's statement to be disregarded by the court. You know, I wouldn't be surprised. If the urchin isn't here in this courtroom as we speak, listening to the proceedings... What? Ah, smoke! Ah, fire! There's a fire! Look, someone's trying to get away! After them! It's no use! I can't see anything all the smoke! What's going on? Be careful, Mr. Naruto! Cover your face! Bailiff, don't let the accused escape! Secure the omnibus! I hereby call an emergency recess. Bailiff, ensure the defendant is in custody and clear the courtroom. We were hurriedly removed from the smoke-filled courtroom by the bailiff, and amid scenes of chaos as people stumbled over one another in their desperation to flee the chamber. We had no idea what was happening. All we knew was for the time being at least, the trial was suspended. Alright, we're at to be continued. I'm going to take like a 5 to 10 minute break. And we will continue. So I'll see you guys in a bit. Don't change that channel.